This is Tuesday Counseling Podcast, episode 3, and we have the most special and wonderful guest today with us. It's Liz. Liz. We have the most wonderful guest. It is Liz Rhea, and we are so excited to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I am so excited.
Yeah, you're our very first guest.
Yeah. Wow. Honored, truly. Can't believe that.
Yeah. It's so cool. Well, obviously, Liz is, if you follow us in any capacity, you probably already know who Liz is. She's very big on TikTok and all the social medias and famous in some sorts. And we're so excited to get to talk to you and kind of see what your story is. But
thanks. Yeah. I always feel like, am I don't know. Social media, it's such a weird, I'm I don't know, I guess.
Yeah. Literally last night, I was with some friends and they're like, you come up on my free page all the time. And that, I don't know how you feel about that comment, but I'm always like, I'm so sorry. Yes. I'm so sorry that that's happening for you.
Yeah. I'm actually block me. That is my preferred. Don't engage. I'm good.
Don't look at it at all. Yeah. Well, yeah. So Liz kind of has this branding almost of being a chill therapist. I feel like that's kind of your niche that you found. I guess maybe start us how did you find kind of your niche within this specific piece of therapy?
Yeah. I remember being in grad school and being so simply if this is how I'm gonna have to do therapy, of this blank slate and tell me what that means to you. Mm-hmm. I was so I'm in the wrong field because I can't keep my facial expressions to myself. I'm just not, this is not how this is gonna happen for me. And I think it was my dad, when I was 16, due to some traumatic things that happened, was hey girly pop, you have to go to therapy. And I was sold, okay, I guess. And it was transformative having a therapist where I could take my shoes off, where I could curl up in a ball on her couch and I don't know, kind of be a little weird and vulnerable and just really comfortable in her space. And I was oh, if this is what I'm gonna do with my career, I want people to know that they can access this type of therapy. Therapy doesn't have to feel like going to the doctor. It doesn't have to feel super clinical. You can show up and your therapist's office can be painted purple and there can be disco balls and you can fidget. And why is there this narrative around therapy has to be really uptight and quote unquote professional, and very blank slate, when people are telling us they're often the most vulnerable parts of themselves, their experience. Yeah. And we're sit in this weird chair that's deeply uncomfortable and you're going to get back pain from it by the end of this session, while also telling me about your trauma. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I feel that's very much, I think, generations past of therapy, is that it's very stiff. It's very blank slate. And not for nothing, I'm sure that kind of therapy works for some clients, but I guess you being able to experience that environment as a client sounds like it really shaped the therapist you became, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And I think I have a lot of compassion for folks who were more in the blank slate generation, because I think for so long we had to prove that therapy was valuable, that therapy was worth investing in. And so we had to kind of use that medical model to get in the door. But now, thank God I'm a therapist now, because that just simply would not have worked for me. And yeah, so it's I hear why that version of therapy had to exist, very diagnosis heavy, very sterile environment. That all makes sense to kind of prove the like validity of therapy. But now, simply the recipient of like that hard work and get the privilege of showing up in my hot and religiously traumatized t-shirt and fidgeting.
Will you show us your shirt? I noticed
yes,
it earlier.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you. It is so fun. Maddie Zom is, yeah, we love Maddie Zom.
Did you get in grad school, actually this is a question for all of us, like when you had to start seeing clients like in whatever practicum or whatever, did they have kind of a dress code that they're like, you need to show up in this way, like this? Like I feel like I was kind of coached to be formal when it comes to that, which I love that that's not really a standard anymore.
So no, because so my degree is in social work, and so your practicum can be like a lot of different things. For me, I was working in queer and trans youth homelessness, and so I was both a case manager and a therapist.
Wow.
Oh my God.
That's a lot.
Yes. I definitely don't recommend being both the like bad guy, the like case manager, and also trying to be the good guy, the therapist at the same time. It's really confusing and difficult. And so I wore like jeans and a t-shirt. And so it wasn't very formal at all. Like I think I probably wore like, I definitely dressed a little bit more professional than I do now, like jeans and a t-shirt, jeans and a blouse, like things like that. Whereas now I fully wear sweatpants sometimes to my sessions.
Love it.
But my first year placement, I did have to dress more professionally, or like business casual, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's pretty standard. Yeah, like when you first start out.
I don't know that I remember. It's not, I mean, Madeline and I went to the same grad school. I don't remember them telling us necessarily what to wear, but I remember feeling pressure, even though I was all virtual. So where that pressure was coming from, I'm not sure. People were only seeing maybe my face. But yeah, but it sounds like they must have said something because that's how you're remembering it too.
Well, I think definitely the way that we show up as therapists, even to like the physical degree of it, can be so disarming for clients, or so harming, I guess is the opposite of like, oh my God, my therapist is wearing like a pantsuit. Like, can I talk to this woman? Can I talk to this person? Versus this person's wearing like normal clothes that they look comfortable in and they look approachable. Like, I think that's so cool that you've kind of tapped into even the details of comfort in session with clients.
I'm a better therapist too when I am comfortable.
Of course.
And like that, I think this, and I don't want to show me like, hello and welcome to Ray Therapy. Here's I'm in a blazer and a pantsuit, and like, tell me about yourself. What do you like to do for fun, right?
What do you like to do for fun? You look like you've never had fun like a day in your life in a pantsuit.
Literally, yeah.
I think it's really cool to kind of notice the nuance between therapists, and I'm sure your clients feel that of like, Liz looks comfortable, I can be comfortable, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's some of the feedback that I've gotten, because I definitely, a lot of my work is with folks who have had experiences in more like intensive psychiatric care. Like a lot of my folks have had experiences of being hospitalized or doing like IOP, PHP, like things like that. And so I think they are, again, kind of used to more of that like medical model of therapy. And then I show up in my crop top and sweatpants, barefoot with a fidget toy, and I'm like, hey, welcome to therapy. And they're like, can I put my feet up on your couch? I'm like, yeah, you can kind of do whatever you want. Like,
you can punch me in the face.
Yeah. I mean, almost anything. I don't know that I would be down. I don't know that I'd be down to get punched, but
That'd be a hard
almost
day.
yeah.
if you want to throw something, we can figure that out. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Erin, you look like you might have something to say.
I was just I'm curious about having the social work background and being a case manager and how you kind of incorporate that into your work as a therapist, because one of my best friends in college does social work and she worked for CPS, and I just remember like there are things from social work that I almost wish that I was able to take like a social work elective class in grad school.
Yeah.
To understand like the more systemic issues and like how can we be a resource not only like in the room with our clients and referring to like different things, but more with the systemic issues. I think especially this day and age right now with what we're dealing with, like that systemic knowledge would be so helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I picked social work, is because I did not go to grad school being like, I'm 100% convinced that I want to do therapy. It was definitely something that I was like really, really, really interested in. But social work is kind of this like catch-all degree, which is, there are so many pros and cons about that. But at the very least, I knew that I could graduate and be like, if I hate therapy, I can do so many other things, which I love therapy. I'm so glad I'm doing it. But yeah, I think one of the primary things that I have noticed in terms of maybe like differences is prioritization of therapy being political, the systemic nature. Like that's part of my phone consult is like, hey, I take a pretty systemic approach to therapy. We're talking about the political systems, the geographic systems, your family system, and how they inform who you are, how you engage with the world, and what safety means to you, right? And then also the emphasis on resources. I am nothing if not a resource girly. Like I basically any resource my clients need, I'm like, yeah, I view it as my job to partner with you to the extent that I am able to find resources for you, because that is and whether they have to do with your mental health or not, like, oh, you need resources for XYZ? Cool. Well, let me know and I will reach out to my people and see what I can find.
Yeah. Kind of advocacy work within that for your clients.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Madeline, because I think that's the other piece of it, is that I view my job as my values inform not just the work that I do, but the way I live my life. And that advocacy piece of it, I don't think I would be doing my job well if that wasn't included in the work that I do, right? So like, I go to like lobbying days at like the state capitol. Like I am like working with vetting like providers to access like gender affirming care, like things like that, where it's like, yeah, I'm constantly having like state of the world meetings being like, okay, what senators do we need to contact? Like, okay, we're SB 39's here, we're doing this, right? Because those are, it's cool, it's great to do therapy. I love therapy, and also my clients don't exist in a vacuum. Like if they lose access to gender affirming care, like yeah, cool, therapy's great, but like they're losing access to their medication that they need.
Yeah. Right. That's incredible. I think that speaks so much to the care that you have for your clients and for the world at large, like really wanting to use your knowledge and your advocacy, your compassion for good. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I am certainly still learning and trying and like get it wrong all the time, but I think that's like the really wonderful thing about having community is like, even if I'm getting it wrong, someone else is getting it right.
Yeah. Well, and I think that something that you are really, I think, unique in, at least online, and I'm sure outside of that too, is your kind of outspokenness when it comes to like therapy being political, when it comes to the populations that you work with. Like, I think that sets you apart in such an important way. Like, I guess, how do you feel about that kind of being part of your brand? Or would you consider that part of your brand?
Yes. I absolutely do. And listen, I said when the Cheeto Puff got elected that I was like, I'm gonna get y'all hate.
You can say it here. You can say it here. That's okay. That's okay.
This is a safe space, Liz.
This is a safe space. You can say that.
The people who have been online bullying me are now gonna come for this podcast. Just kidding.
Perfect.
It's fine.
I was like, I am nothing if not a menace. Like, how did we end up? I know how we ended up here. I don't need that explained to me.
You're like, don't go there.
I'm like, actually, no one in the comments needs to explain that. We all know how we got here.
We understand.
Yeah, I think that is a really important piece of it because, one, I think people need to see therapists talking about politics and recognizing that, like, hey, so I, as a human being, as a client, like, fuck being a therapist, simply just as a client in my own therapy, if my therapist does not have shared values and voted in a way that is innately harmful, not just to me, but to my partner, to my community, like, all of that, I'm not safe. Like, I'm supposed to show up and talk about, again, the most vulnerable pieces of myself, knowing, which include, like, my queerness, which include being partnered with someone who is a person of color, right? Which include, like, the work that I do. And then know that my therapist in her personal life is like, I don't care about this. I'm voting for whatever reason she's voting. Yeah, I want that to be part of what I am known for, especially because the work that I am doing, therapy is political no matter the work you're doing, but particularly working in gender-affirming care and queer spaces, it's super political. And so, and that is something that I get feedback about all the time from clients who find me on social media, are like, oh my gosh, I immediately knew that, like, we might be a better fit because I know your values. You're really clear about your values, and that's something that is really important to me, and I wish more therapists were clear about their values. Like, hey, you value it, say it with your full chest. Like, let's go.
Yeah. I'm like, the way that we've become so polarized, the parties are so different now that, like, maybe therapists didn't need to disclose that in whatever early 1900s or some shit, but, like, we do now. Like, I fully agree with you that there's a big difference, especially working with the communities we work with, that, like, we need to be upfront about it and be honest.
That's what I was thinking about, Madeline. I was always taught in grad school that, like, whatever your values are, whatever your, like, belief systems are, like, you leave them at the door and then you walk in the room.
Right.
It is what it is. And I think in a time before now, like, that was fine, right?
Yeah.
And now it's just, like, not fine at all. in my opinion. I saw Liz posting about therapy being political, and it gave me, now in all of my consults with future clients, I say, like, it is my belief that, like, therapy is inherently political, and if you need to know something about me in order to feel safer seeing me and to feel more comfortable, I am more than happy to share where I stand with you. Especially, I see a lot of, like, women's health stuff too, which is very, very important to me. So, Liz, thank you for saying it with your chest, because now I feel like I can say it with my chest. And that's the thing. I think when you're combating, like, what you learn in grad school, but, like, what feels right in the core of your being as a human, like, that's what I was going back and forth on for so long, was just like, okay, well, I was told in grad school that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, leave it at the door. Like, it's not, it doesn't have any place here. That started feeling more and more not right. And not aligning with, like, the type of therapist that I wanted to be. So
I also love adding that. That's something I hadn't considered. I don't do consultation calls, but, like, at the beginning of an intake, because I think people have this experience, whether it be with past clinicians or just what they see sometimes from social media. I can't ask. I have so many clients come in, they're like, well, I know I can't ask anything about you, but can I? And to give them permission to say, you can ask me anything. Like, I want you to have that permission, because, and we talked about this maybe last time, like how different the therapeutic relationship is than any other relationship. And you're asking someone to come and sit across from you and trust you. Trust has to be earned. And I think that's a great way to kind of say it up front.
Yeah. I mean, one, Erin, honored to have influenced in any sort of way. Thank you. My two thoughts about that too are, one, who are the people who are telling us that therapy is not political? What identities do they hold, and how is it protecting them?
A heater.
Oh. Yeah.
Because are they just mostly cis, straight, white, middle class, upper middle class? Like, what are the identities that you're holding? Who is telling you this, right? Because I can guarantee you that if we asked folks who are sitting at the intersection of marginalized identities, more marginalized identities than I have, or maybe any of the folks in this space have, that for them, therapy has probably always been political, and they've always needed it to be political, right? And so, yeah, just kind of thinking critically about like who's telling us that, and how is it keeping them safe? And then two, Avery, to your point, right, with the kind of giving permission, that's how I end all of my first sessions. My intake session always ends with me being like, hey, this space is not about me. And if you ever have any questions about me, you never have to walk through that door. You never have to ask me a single question about me. But if you do, you always get to ask, and know that I'm telling you from the beginning that you can ask. And as long as it's appropriate and ethical, and I feel okay answering it, I will always answer it. And normally it's like, what do you do for fun? Do you go to therapy? What am I supposed to say to that? Like, and what would it mean to you if I did go to therapy?
I wonder why you're curious about me.
Yeah, I think that there is such a kind of hesitancy that clients naturally approach with therapy of like, are you real? Like, do you have a life outside of this? Do you feel safe to me? Did you actively vote against my rights as a human being? You know, like, I don't think clients are out of line for wanting to know that. I don't think therapists are out of line for wanting to share that. When it directly impacts the level of safety felt in the room, which we all know is the only thing that really matters at the end of the day. You can't do anything without it. Yeah.
No, not at all. And I think like, yeah, okay, and so what if your client wants to know, like, oh yeah, have you ever been to London? Like, do you have any recommendations? Like, you know, even like things that are like not about like specifically or kind of like directly about safety within the space. So what if your client wants to know that? Like, I just think about that all the time of like, with our ethics, we're taught to not do any harm. But when a client is brave and asking us something that feels scary to ask within a power dynamic, what harm are we doing by not sharing that with them if we feel comfortable to, just because some likely white person in grad school told us, be a blank slate and don't answer questions?
Yeah. Totally. I think it absolutely depends on who you are seeing also. Like that approach might work for somebody that holds a similar identity in that way. But if they're a person who is really struggling to like put food on their table, to like pay bills, like the kind of clients that we all like, that's very relevant and that's very important to be able to work with anybody. And they are not looking for an answer of like, I wonder why you're asking me. Like, I wonder what it would mean for me to tell you that. Like, fuck off. Like, I just am trying to understand you. Like, I worked with pre and postnatal mood disorders in my practicum. And I was also when I had a professor that told me never to disclose. And I remember someone being like, do you have kids? And I remember being like, I wonder what that would mean for you if I did. And I didn't even like saying it. And they were like, it was like offensive to them that I wouldn't say the answer. And so I think that having the disclosure, having the honesty, like, I don't think there's ever, I think within the appropriate boundaries, I think it can only be helpful. So,
well, and what are we teaching our clients if they are vulnerable and brave enough to say, hey, like, I'm curious about this thing about you, right? If therapy is a microcosm of like everything that happens out in the world and the relationships that you have day to day, and they are taking that risk and saying like, hey, like, I want to know more about you, and we essentially shut them down, what are we teaching them in the room that then they go out into the world and think, okay, well, like, I'm probably not going to try that again because it didn't feel good.
Yeah, and also, how are clients supposed to engage in their right to self-determination if they don't have enough information about the space?
Totally.
Like, and what if them getting enough information to determine if you are a right fit, if they want to keep going, like keep working with you, is them asking you a couple questions about yourself, gauging how you respond to them, and then going, oh wait, actually I do need someone who is willing to self-disclose a little bit more, to be a little bit more vulnerable, to engage in more relational therapy. Like, to me, that, again, within reason, right? There are plenty of types of self-disclosure that are deeply inappropriate, harmful, unethical, and I think there are quantities of self-disclosure that can also be unethical, harmful, all of those things. But if a client's like, do you have anxiety? Do you, like, have you ever, like, hey, how do you take care of yourself? Like, is this something that you've ever struggled? You know what I mean? Like, those types of things is like, yeah, I can answer this in 30 seconds, deep in the therapeutic relationship and trust, and also develop that skill of using my answer to then continue to engage with the client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Like,
I think so.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that we will all be cheering you on for your TED Talk when you're talking about this.
Thank you.
I think I know I'm not alone in saying, like, just the respect that I feel for you as a colleague, as like a fellow therapist, as a person, just like really feeling honored to know you and know the work that you're doing and the care that you're providing. It's really encouraging, I think, to a lot of people.
Thanks. So nice. And also, I mean, shout out to TikTok, because truly getting to build meaningful relationships with colleagues like all over the country is simply because, like, from my experience at least, is simply because of TikTok, which has been so cool and so fulfilling and so rewarding, and literally how I got connected with all of y'all, which is so cool.
Yeah. It has been such a gift. I think that funny little app, it's done so much for us.
Literally.
I guess, like, being a therapist on TikTok, you're our first guest, but you're also our first famous guest, which I can say.
How lucky are we?
How lucky are we? What has that been like for you to have, like, visibility period in social media? Like, has that been weird to balance that?
Yeah, it's weird. I think being a therapist on social media, which, like, I want to throw the question back to y'all too, is like, from my experience, I was like, oh no, did I mute myself? I would say that, like, I've gotten so many clients, like, most of my clients find me, or like potential clients find me through social media now, which is really cool because they tend to be really good fits, because they, like, see my vibe and are like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm looking for, which is really cool. I haven't had a lot of scenarios where, like, clients have been weird about me being on social media, mostly because it is part of my, like, informed consent conversation when I start working together, and even on the phone consult. And I'm like, hey, so if you don't want to see your therapist, like, pop up on your For You page when you're 1 a.m. doom scrolling, totally get it. I wouldn't want that either. Block me. And I have no qualms about it. What has been weird is that and this is fueling the like famous person that you said, Madeline. I have been recognized.
I was about to ask if you've ever been recognized. On the streets? In the wild?
So in 3 different ways. So
Liz!
You're very famous.
Oh my god.
Okay. Here's how this works in like a short kind of like synopsis is that I have been pretty full for the duration of my career, which has been really awesome, really wonderful. And so when I get referrals, I believe fully that if a therapist gets an inquiry, they have an obligation, like an ethical obligation, to respond to that inquiry, at least offering like a couple referrals, right? And so I referred to my colleagues because I trust them. And so there has been an instance where I was like walking in the hallway and someone who was seeing one of my colleagues was like, oh my God, I follow you on TikTok. Like, you're the reason I have a therapist. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Then at Pride in Atlanta, I got recognized twice.
Oh, of course. That's so cool.
Like, someone came up to me. I was literally standing in a group with my friends, like we were like trying to figure out food. And she's like, hey, so sorry to interrupt. I follow you on TikTok. Your videos are why I know like to only accept like nothing less than a 60-40 split. I send your videos in our grad school group chat all the time. And I was like, okay, I'm going to explode. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
So that's wild.
That's so cool. That's so special that people would, because I'm sure, I'm willing to bet that of the people that have come up to you, more people have recognized you and just said, I'm not going to bother her. Like, I'm not going to go up to her. But to be brave enough to be like, I'm going to say hi. I'm going to say something.
It was wild. Also, my, like, 2 best friends got to witness it, and they were like, oh, we're in the presence of someone. And I was like, okay, so somebody...
autographs out here.
And then I got recognized at a college fair multiple times.
That's so cool. You are something of a personality, which is so funny, I think, to be a therapist and to hold that component of your identity too. I was talking to another therapist about this last week of like, sometimes it gets a little bit tricky when you get big enough on a platform like that you might get inquiries not because people feel like they'd be a good fit for you, but because you are like, they want contact with you or they're interested in you and they see you on their feet all the time, you know?
Yeah, almost that like parasocial relationship. I don't know if I've run into that, at least not to my knowledge.
I'm not big enough for that. No one cares that much for me.
Yeah, I have had folks who I've sent referrals to and then like keep reaching out. And at that point I'm like, I will not see you for therapy. It's been a year and I have declined every time.
Yeah. So I think there comes with the visibility comes a certain level of like protection that you also get to, put in place. I love your thoughts about like, hey, and I think maybe you taught me this of like, you can follow my account, you can block my account, you can interact with it as much as you feel comfortable. Because I don't know how I'd feel if I just saw my therapist, out and about on my free page. Like,
some therapists are totally different about this, and I think you can make ethical arguments for either one. So I think it's most kind of down to like personal preference and like personal safety and things like that. I am fine with clients engaging with my social media presence in whatever way they see fit. And part of that is logistically, I won't know if they do. And so like, I kind of want clients to feel the freedom if there is like a video that I post or whatever, that they can bring it up to me and they're like, hey, you posted this weird thing and I hated it. Or like, hey, I really resonated with this, right? And not having to almost keep a secret because I don't want that. But my boundaries are, don't message me on these apps, because otherwise we'll have to have more like strict boundaries. Or don't comment things like, that's my therapist. Oh my god. But other than that, I'm like, I'm putting myself on the internet. Like, they can see what I post if they want to.
Yeah.
And post, and keeping that in mind, because I don't ever want a client to see a post and be like, oh my god, she's talking about me.
Right. That's my biggest thing. And I think, again, that seems to be a personal decision for therapists. I just feel like if I were a client of a therapist on TikTok and I'm seeing a video of like a mention of a session, I'm like, I think she's talking about me. Like, I think she's talking about the session we had last week or something. Like, I would feel like content opportunities for my therapist rather than a client of my therapist. I think that's where it gets a little bit shaky.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Different.
Yeah, I agree with that, which is why when I am talking about, like, because I'll make a lot of posts of like things clients can request in therapy, or like statements you can make to your therapist, and kind of pulling on general experiences that I have had with lots of clients. Or things that like colleagues have shared that I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that is something that like people can do in therapy, rather than just like, and this week my client asked me for this specific thing, and like, shout out to that client who asked me, and like that, I think it can get gray, and that's why I am also very clear with like clients of like, hey, if you ever feel uncomfortable with anything that I've posted, let's talk about it. Like, let's explore that together.
Yeah, totally.
I'm so interested in TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I'm on TikTok. I have a TikTok, but I do not post content. One, I'm not very creative, but also I wonder what it's like to get, because I obviously follow closely Madeline and Erin's, to get negative feedback. What is that like? And I guess that's for all of you. I feel like that would be I'm very sensitive. It's my feelings when people comment things. I almost want to comment back and be like, that's not true.
Yeah.
These are my friends.
Yeah. Madeline and I encountered a learning lesson this week. That
Did we ever?
involved my behavior, because I put something on the Tuesday TikTok, and someone commented and was like, who are you? And I was like, what do you mean?
Where's the
I'm Erin.
I've been here for months. Where is it?
Yeah.
So it definitely doesn't feel good, but also I think it's you get some very blunt learning tools, advice. So
I would imagine, Liz, being as honest and like outspoken as you are, that's bound to resonate really well with some people. That's bound to resonate really poorly with some people.
Yeah, listen, sometimes you
can't win them all.
No.
Well, and I think there's a difference between criticism, because I'm like, fine, you want to be critical of this, but you're being kind, thoughtful, compassionate. You can stay, like, that's fine. I'm not above criticism at all. Like, I'm all for it. Like, we can have a dialogue, I guess, or people in the comments can have a dialogue. It's when it's getting mean, and that sometimes you post a video being like, I don't understand how therapists think that they are ethical and vote for Donald Trump on Inauguration Day, and people are pissed. And you have to turn off your comments and do a bunch of cybersecurity things because you get very threatened. And what I will say is that, again, criticism, fine, stick around. Like, and also, am I like upsetting you on your social media? Like, just block me, unfollow me. That's okay. You don't have to be angry on social media, like whatever. But that was the experience. I've had like mean comments. I've had mean DMs before. I've had threatening DMs, things like that, threatening emails. That one was, I woke up to like hundreds of comments all about my body. Which was pretty destabilizing. And like, I don't think we're meant to hear that much really horrible things from strangers at one time. And after truly the like 75th person that I like blocked and removed the comment, I was like, oh, actually I can just remove comments on this entire video. And even if this really resonated with people, that's great. That's cool. You can still watch the video, but no one, wait, this is my space and you don't get access to comment about me in this way. And especially when it wasn't, again, criticism or being like, hey, I think you need to think. Feedback. Right. It was the most heinous things I have ever heard about my body in a really weird way. So
just ugly, not relevant, not any, there's no basis or need for a comment about bodies of creators ever. So that's so odd. And probably so upsetting.
From other therapists.
Wow.
Like some of them, because I had to go to their profile to like block them. Yeah. And I was like,
screenshotted, sent to the board.
Like, are you kidding me? You said that. What? Okay.
Wow.
And so, I mean, what I will say to that is like, it is your space. Like, just because you are posting things on the internet does not deserve you don't deserve mean comments, hateful comments, derogatory comments, fatphobic, body based, like any of that stuff. You do not deserve those comments. It is your space. You get to block people. You get to remove comments. Like, you get to make your space your space. And like with posting of just like, can I block this person? I don't know. Is that mean? Like, am I being mean back? Like, I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah.
And also, what if they email me now and are like, you blocked me? Like, I can't believe you blocked people on the internet as a therapist. But I do.
As you should.
I've gotten some responses like that. It's just so wild to be posting like your opinion on something. People are allowed to disagree with us. Like, that is not a problem. I have no issue with being disagreed with or having, critical opinions. Like, that's okay. You're entitled to that. But to then like go out of your way to send something like really, really hateful, and that's where I draw the line. And it is my account, and I can block whoever I feel like I want to, for whatever. Like, I reserve that right, and I would encourage anyone to also reserve the same right.
Yeah.
But then sometimes they'll email you and call you really mean names and really not nice things. Yeah. And so what can you do?
You can find therapist friends that you send a screenshot to and are like, hey, what do I do about this?
And that's exactly what I did. I said, Liz, I'm scared. What do I do?
I said, hey, girly, same. And also, don't respond. It's okay.
Yeah. No, you don't need to reply.
Do nothing. So I think that's a really, really funny intersection of being like a professionally trained therapist, being a professional on this app where you seem really accessible to people. You are accessible to people, and they feel like they can just say anything. Like, my clients could see mean comments and be like, that's my therapy. Like, it just introduces a really weird alternative dynamic that's not really, as common as just therapists not on any social media.
Yeah. Well, yes. And that's a great distinction of not negative feedback, but the hate comments that I've seen. And of course, I find myself wanting to comment back. I'm like, am I really going to get into a comment war with someone who I have no idea who they are? But yeah, I can imagine that's hard to hear, but also all of the good work outweighs like those challenges. but it's
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah, I think it's like, yeah, you're balancing like accessibility of like potential clients to find you and know that like therapy of this kind is an option, with also like opening yourself up to kind of anyone on the internet can like comment, which is a weird place to be. And I will say, I think that's where a social media disclaimer can be so helpful, because I will say that there are times when I'm like, oh, actually, I'm not going to get into a comment war with you, but I will say, see my social media disclaimer. Like, I've gotten this comment like 12 times, and I'm like, if we use our eyeballs and go look at the social media disclaimer, I explain all of this.
Yep.
I did the labor for you. No worries.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, literally.
It's already been done. Well, yeah, I think it's a new kind of terrain that all of us are sort of exploring on how to blend these two pieces of our identities and our interests, and I think it does come with its learning curves and less than kind comments, but
yeah. And I think that's why also like Madeline, I've been so grateful for like you putting together like the consultation group and things like that, because it's like, oh yeah, wait, just like we need consultation, and like I love consultation. It is truly one of my favorite parts of this job, is just getting to like, yeah, let me use my colleague's brain too to make sure I'm like, engaging in competent care. And just like we do that with like clinical things that come up, like we can do that with navigating social media, navigating marketing, like navigating all of those things, and getting to like draw on each other's wisdom in collective spaces.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really cool. We can kind of switch gears into the question that we got, which was for Liz specifically, but I think we'll all comment on it a little bit, of like, when you are a therapist and you are working within queer populations, people that hold queer identities, how do you address like, or get curious with clients about maybe their own internalized homophobia? So like beliefs that maybe they hold about queer people or themselves, or, I'm sure there's a lot that can feed into why they hold that at all.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I completely agree with you. There's so many facets. I think the most common two that I see, well, maybe three, are one, we're in the South, right? And so like socially it is, I mean, I'm in Atlanta, and so like Atlanta's pretty queer, but it like geographically we are in the South, and so that socially is pretty homophobic historically. Families love to be homophobic, and religion, and it's that one that I am most often working at the intersection of like queer folks with religious trauma, some of whom want to maintain religion, and some of whom are like, get me out of here, I have no interest in doing the religious thing anymore. And I would say like, I think this is where using kind of the framework of like narratives and or parts work is so helpful, and kind of, okay, what if we consider that narrative coming from a part of you, not all of you. And like, how is that part trying to keep you safe, right? Because so often that internalized homophobia has kept my clients safe within their family unit until they could get out. And now that part is just misguided, hasn't been updated, right? Like things like that we're often working with when they're maybe younger parts of us. And so I would say that is one of my primary kind of approaches, and also just like normalizing. I think there's so much shame around being like, I'm queer and I have internalized homophobia. It's like, yeah, girl, of course you do. That makes sense. Like, you could not escape conservative religion without internalized homophobia. And so, in just like a lot of trauma work, we are slow moving. It is the long game for that type of stuff, especially if they're still within religion, especially if they're still connected to like homophobic family members, things like that, because you're working with something that's still active, and so that can be really confusing.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I think the society we live in is just heteronormative and always has been, and I feel like everyone has a certain degree of internalization of that narrative, of that messaging. So that I think bringing normalization to that experience too is so important.
Yeah.
In addition to kind of the parts work or the kind of understanding the difference between you and that part of you that might feel that way.
Yeah.
I
think the normalization and also the reminder that like within parts work, there is a version of you that doesn't know any better, right? Like this version of you doesn't know any better, any different from what it learned when this part came to be.
Yeah.
And so the normalization of it, and also like we could be talking about a part that came around when you were like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, like just doesn't know any different. This is all that it's known, and this is all that it's known to protect you and keep you safe. So
yeah, absolutely.
Offering a safe place to explore that. But right, how past experiences, it makes sense that past experiences impact current beliefs and functioning.
Yeah, and I also think like, okay, let's operate in the same way that we do about like like misogynistic beliefs around like, you know, I think when it is an internalized belief that you have around your own identity, there can be so much more shame there, but also like we can talk about this in the same way we talk about so many other internalized beliefs and social narratives that we're given, which I think can bring a sense of like relief of like, oh yeah, I have this internalized narrative, like I have this part of me that is holding these things, and it makes sense that that's how they've engaged. Yeah, so I think that can also kind of be a helpful perspective to bring.
Totally. It's kept you safe. It's kept you alive. In some circumstances, probably. Like that is not something to necessarily be critical of, but to maybe hold some curiosity towards of what was this part trying to protect you from, and like how has it been doing that for you? And I think that's so important. And hey, you know what you couldn't have that conversation without is safety in the room. So
True.
Yep. So true. Bring us full circle to make sure your clients feel safe.
Yeah, they're not going to talk to you about that if they don't know anything about you.
No, they're not. And it is on the therapist to respond in a curious and compassionate and like really beautiful, because when a client is telling you like, I think I have like, what if I'm homophobic? It's like, okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about it. Right? Yeah. Instead of like, you're not homophobic, like you're queer. Like it's like, no, they probably are. And let's be curious about it. And that's okay.
Yeah. The trust they had in you to even make any mention of it at all.
Yeah.
Needs to be respected.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I feel like that is, I hope that's a good answer to you listening. If you asked that, I hope that felt helpful. We didn't talk about doing this beforehand, but I'm thinking like, how do we want to close out episodes with guests? You're kind of our trial run, Liz. Sorry.
I love being a trial run. That's great.
Something that my family really hates when I do at any like birthday dinner, any like anniversary, I'm always the one that's like, everyone go around the table and say your favorite thing about dad or your favorite thing about mom. Can I didn't pitch this beforehand. Do we all want to go around the room and say our favorite thing about Liz?
Oh my God, I would love to do that.
Yay.
I love this game.
Okay. I'll give you guys time to think. I'll go first since this was my idea. I have so many things I really like about Liz. I would say my most favorite thing is her compassion that just like radiates off of her for the communities that she's passionate about, and her advocacy, I think, is so unique and is so needed right now that it's just such a breath of fresh air to be in your presence and to learn from you. And I think that's, of the many things, that's probably my favorite.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're about to get 2 more, so
We're not done yet.
hang on. You're not done.
Liz, I kind of already said this beforehand, but I think my favorite thing about you is just your fire, knowing that like what fuels your fire is like compassion and advocacy, like what Madeline said, but the way that you are just so passionate, and I know that you have encouraged and inspired me to be more loud and say more things with my chest as a therapist. And so I can imagine if you've had that impact on me, it's not the only person. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin. That is so kind.
Woo.
Not to piggyback on the first 2, but I've seen you on TikTok. This is my first time meeting you, but how authentic you are and showing up on social media in that way, and giving permission to other therapists, right, of the way that people were trained, of saying, wait a minute, there's a different way. I think that that's so refreshing to hear, and offering that transparency and authentic part of yourself. I really appreciate that. I love watching it, and I've loved talking to you too.
Thank you. Y'all are so kind. And I feel like I get to give y'all something back, which is like, I am...
Yeah, what do you like about us?
Yeah, exactly. This is perfect. I'm really grateful for this space, and I think that like being therapists and just getting to kind of like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about different things. Let's talk about our experiences. And this space to me feels like a values-based space and like anti-gatekeepy, which is something that I really, really think is so important in our field. And I'm grateful to y'all for kind of like co-creating this space and bringing people in, and y'all just like chatting too about like, yeah, let's normalize experiences. Let's like bring information to the table, and make this accessible for people, because that feels so aligned with the work that like Madeline and Erin, I know y'all to do, and Avery, I presume you do as well, even though this is our first time meeting, right? Of just like, yeah, we get to do our work with clients, but also like, how can we support other therapists? And that to me is like, yeah, some of the incredible work that y'all are doing in this space and outside of it. And I'm really grateful to and honored to be like invited into this space. Like, what a gift, truly.
Please. The honor is ours. We're so excited that you were here.
So excited.
Well, thank you for being here. We would love to have you back on. Love to have you back on the show sometime soon.
Would love to come back.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening. Anything you want to say to your loyal fans, Liz, before we go?
I have follow Tuesday counseling. Don't follow me.
Heard. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.